History hidden from you and anti-critical race theorists.
Anti-critical race theorists don't want you to know.
Here's some of the Black British royalty. On the top right, you see Charles V of Spain, the Holy Roman Emperor, and Charlemagne, who were both Black, and they were Edomites. And there was also the aristocracy of the Blacks of Spain, and there was also Joseph's aristocracy. King James was descended from aristocracy known to be Calico. That is the tribe of Joseph, whose blessings, when you read about them in the Bible, are that he'll be as blessed as long as Judah, and the scepter and the law will never depart from between the feet of Judah. So Judah is still a king and prospers to this day. And so the Israelites also called themselves Moor. And when we look at the biblical dictionary, we can see that here again, it means teacher, oracle. It means district, mountain, and land. The word Moor. Moor also means light. And so in Jeremiah 26 and 18, it says that Micah was a Morishite and he prophesied in the days of Hezekiah, king of Judah, and spoke to all of the people of Judah. So Moor was a term that the Israelites also used to call themselves because they were being shamed for calling themselves Jews or Israelites, so they would revert to other terms. And Moor is very closely associated with the term Negro. According to Nature Knows No Color Line, remember Esau and Jacob were twins. They weren't identical twins, but they were twins nonetheless. And so Europe was occupied by both of them because Esau, Edom, was taking over the kingdom, as the blessing of Isaac said, when you get the yoke of Jacob off your neck, and you'll live off the fat of the land, etc., and you'll live by the sword. And so the Sir William Smith says the Moors were known in the Alessandrian dialect as the blacks. The Moors were known as the blacks, and were considered a different race from the Numidians. So those are the Midianites and stuff, right? And so it was a very commonly used term for the Israelites and for the Islamists. And there was a relationship between them. So between Esau and Ishmael and Israel. And we see even here, here's another reference you can pause to read. We also learn that King James' wife, Queen Anne, said that she was descended from the Sun people who came to Europe to look for a mother son. And she did a play that was a personage of the Niger River. And this costume design shows a tall Black woman, so Anne of Denmark, who certainly was Black. And the whole Stuart dynasty, that is, King James came from the Stuart dynasty, they were Black. We also see here that the Teutonic Knights, who were in the region of Germany, they were Black. This is the Grand Master Ulrich von Jungen, who fought in the Battle of Grunwald, and he was in the Teutonic Order. We also see in a German Bible that the Queen of Sheba was rendered as black-skinned. And here is a lot of the heraldry. This is the Duchy of Prussia. The Black Palatine Boers, according to Benjamin Franklin, were dark-skinned. You can pause to read, and they came from Germany. So Beor was one of the sons of Esau, and of course he was black-skinned. And here is the invasion of the Normans into Black Europe, or French and Dutch and Belgian crests. And you say they were all Black. This Pope is a Negro Pope, so he would be an Edomite. This is Pope Gregory, and his time was between 590 to 604 Anno Domini, or CE, after Christ. There was another Gregor the Moor who was around in the same region of England, all right, from 1350 to 1683. And of course, Britain was first populated from Niger, all right, El Dube. And so here's some images of him and his descendants.
In John Ogilvy's Africa, an accurate description, we're going to find the roots of this Dube as part of Prester John's larger Edomite empire. And we're going to find that it actually includes Dubai. And here is where the root word is from this word Dube. So these kingdoms are defined as the 14 territories being not kingdoms, so they're part of his territories, but they're not their own kingdom, are Dubain, a member of the Tigray Exanko in the Fame realm bordering that of Dan Kali. All right, and we're going to skip down here to the end of this sentence, and it says Aris on the other side of the Nile, and last follows Gara lying above Aris. Now, Gara was generally the land of the Philistines and the Greeks, all right? And so that is near and around what we call Egypt in Africa today, which is just a colony. It's not true Egypt. America is Egypt. But the kingdom has received such diminutions by the Turks and the Gallas that Prester John at this day enjoys only 6 great and 10 small provinces. The Great Tigray, Dambia, Bagamonte, Gogamo, Amhara, Nartia, and part of Hausa, I believe. The lesser are Magza, Salient, Algara. All right. So when you see Og and Gara, you're referring to the Philistines. All right. Arbageli, Halkate, Sagweda, Shemen, Salo, Ozeka, so the land of Oz, and Dubai. This is where the word Dubai comes from. Here it may be plainly observed onto how narrow a compass the dominions of Prester John are circumscribed from what antiquity relates, which we may believe they did guess at. So that is what is related in antiquity. However, it's not really, they're not certain it's the full scope.
So more, and of course, even in Russia, in Moscow, we see these black religious figures. And these are the Presters, the Prester Johns, who would be descendants of Esau, Edom. And they are also chroniclers. Nestor, the chronicler, again refers to the Prester Johns. These are legitimate documentations. They kept these chronicles called the Russian Chronicles of the religious and ethnic history there. And of course, we know Ivan the Terrible and his son were Black Russians. And so that's no surprise to anybody. And then we find out that there were these huge inquisitions where many, many people were massacred in Europe in the 10th century.
But their inquisitors were black popes, black Edomites, and black and mixed race kings and queens, Isabella from Spain and Portugal.
About the close of the 10th century, so it's about 1100 AD, when the Christian church held all Europe in its grasp, kings and emperors trembled at edicts and bulls of the vicegerent of Christ. As the octopus holds the victim in his death struggle, so priests held the lives and liberty of the people and their property in his clerical fangs. In France alone, thousands of Jews were burned at the stake, so nothing new, right? On one occasion, 160 men were bound hand and foot and thrown into a deep ditch. Wood was piled on them, the torch applied, while numbers of priests stood by with uplifted hands, calling on their Savior to witness to the suffering of the unbelieving Jews. Whole families were burned in this funeral pyre for the reason that the pious Christians could not see them separated. Only few and far between, says one historian, were the Christian monarchs who rose above the barbarities of the church. From the 11th to 14th century, says another historian, the history of the Jews is a succession of massacres. Philip Augustus confiscated their property and banished them from France. So France is no different today, right? Louis the 11th, I think that is, a very pious prince, says an historian, confiscated a third of the property of the Jews for the benefit of his own soul, and at that time issued an edict for the destruction of their sacred books by fire. And the share of this confiscated property was given over to the priests to intercede with Christ for the salvation of the monarch's soul. In the reign of Philip the Fair in 1306 AC, the Jews, having returned to France, were again expelled from the country with the usual accompaniment of cruelty, says another author. The financial condition of the country became embarrassed, and the Jews were permitted to return. In 1321, a religious epidemic having seized the faithful, an uprising took place where the poor, unfortunate Jews were, without regard to age or sex, indiscriminately slaughtered. In their flight and frenzy, the Jews at Verdun threw their children into the streets to appease the infuriated Christian mob. The book A Tribute for the Negro shows that many of these expelled Jews settled in the west coast of Africa. And we can see from this in Jewish encyclopedia that many of them were named Negro Ben Yahya, Negro Ben Solomon, and they were scattered to the west. They were first sent to the west into slavery. And here's an account that the Polish Jews were very dark. And in this case, they compare them to orangutans, and they're talking about the scattered 12 tribes from Galatia. So pause to read. And so once again, the Negro Jews are documented here in the Jewish Encyclopedia.
So why am I mentioning all of this? These are the 8 creepiest churches made of bones. Of course, they're in Europe. This is one in Poland. All the way from Poland to medieval ossuary Spain, here are the 8 coolest churches made of bones from around the world. Now, who would call that cool if it was their own people? Probably no one. Czech Republic, in Schwarzenberg, Czech Republic. This is one in Ossa, Milan. Who would be okay with this? This is Poland if this was their own people, and this is Portugal. And the same, this is Peru. Ireland. These skulls are everywhere. And as I've said, the indigenous people to Europe were originally black. But these skulls are all dolichocephalic.
Cephalic index is the maximum width of the skull multiplied by 100 divided by the maximum length. As a result, below 75 indicates dolichocephalic. And so that's why I have listed this. And so you can see here on the top right that Europe, Western Europe, and primarily Eastern Europe and Western Canada, where a lot of the Asians are from, all have the darkest blocks, which are the widest heads. And of course, Africa mostly has the sort of longer or dolichocephalic head. And so this clearly indicates that yes, Esau Edom was mixing with the Canaanites, who to a large degree are occupying Western Europe and even around areas of China, the Mongolians, and so on.